Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream of Hamlet Can Suck It, a new Zoom play. My name is Izzy. I am the director, producer, and co-creator of this play.
And my name is Ryan, and I am the co-creator and playwright of this play.
I can't believe we're finally here. Ryan and I have been working on this project for almost a year now, and I think I can speak for the both of us in saying how special it is sitting here virtually in front of all of you about to share our work for the first time with the help of an amazing cast and creative team.
So the idea for this play originated at the 2019 Ottawa Fringe Festival and was created to be produced at the 2020 Ottawa Fringe. Since then, our vision and medium has changed and evolved significantly due to factors both in and out of our control. Regardless, we want to thank all of you who are watching live and all of you who may be watching this later on YouTube. Thank you for joining us on the digital platform to see our show.
So before we begin, we want to acknowledge the lands and waterways that we are calling in from. The creation process for this work was done predominantly on Zoom, which allowed for us to collaborate from across Turtle Island. I am personally calling in from Toronto, Ontario. Toronto is located on the land long shared by the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Ojibwe, the Huron-Wendat, in a Dish with One Spoon agreement. It remains now, as it always has been, a gathering place for Indigenous peoples and for peoples of all nations.
I'm calling in from Ottawa, and Ottawa-Gatineau is located on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation.
One of our actors is also calling in from Stratford, Ontario, and Stratford is located on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Ojibwe peoples.
We also have another actress coming in from Red Deer, Alberta. Red Deer is situated at the meeting place of Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 territories. This land is the traditional territory of the Blackfoot, Tsuut'ina, Stoney Nakoda, Cree, Saulteaux, and Métis people.
When we acknowledge the Indigenous people of this land, we must also acknowledge that colonization is not simply a thing of the past, but that colonial aggressions are carried out every day.
As settlers on this land, we must constantly work alongside First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people to overcome the lasting effects of colonialism in Canada and to create a fair and equitable nation for all people.
So our play today is approximately 1 hour in length, and please join us after the show for a talk back with the cast and the creative team. Please feel free to leave your questions in the live stream comments and we will answer them at the end of the show. And now I will be turning it over to the cast of Hamlet Can Suck It.
Hello, my name is Ryan, and I am playing the role of the TA. I am wearing a white shirt, a blue blazer. My hair is in a bun. I have glasses, a short beard. My background is a piano, a succulent. There is a painting on a gray wall, and the great Canadian novel Bear. And I am calling in from the Glebe in Ottawa.
Hi there, my name is Armand Garnizade. I play Sam. I have short black hair on the sides of my head, as well as like a poof of coiffed locks on top. I am in my bedroom with a white background. I have a white door with a white towel hanging off of it to my left, and a white closet behind me to my right. I am wearing a ocean blue, royal blue polo shirt, and I'm calling in from North York, Ontario, in Toronto.
Hi, I'm Jill, and I will be playing Emily. My hair is down, it's brown, it's medium length, kind of curly, kind of not. I'm wearing pajamas. I'm sitting on my bed. Behind me is my bed frame, a lamp, and a dark purple wall. I am calling in from Red Deer, Alberta.
Hi, my name is Jamie. I'm playing Bailey. I have very long dark brown hair that I'm wearing down and it's slightly curly. I am wearing overalls and a black tank top, and I am sitting in my bedroom on my bed with my bed frame behind me, 2 pictures above the bed frame, and the wall is a gray color. I am calling in from Stratford, Ontario.
Hello, I'm Linus, and I am playing the character of Colin today. I am wearing a white polo neck jumper, boxers, jeans, no socks. I have black rimmed glasses, a little bit of stubble, and a lionish mane of hair tied back with a hairband, so you can see my eyes. My bed, the room is, mostly featured by curtains, a white wall, and a very messy cupboard in the background. I am calling in from Alma in Gatineau.
Hi, I'm Alicia, and I'll be playing Donna. I currently have on a yellow shirt and a headband on my hair. It is brown. My hair is in a short black afro, curly afro. I am currently in my bedroom. I'm sitting on a chair. Directly behind me is my pink wall and a wall calendar hanging up there as well. I'm calling in from Scarborough, Ontario.
Hi, hello, looks like we're all here. Hey, can everyone hear me all right? I'm not frozen, am I? Oh, okay, great. Well, thanks for showing up to the last class before the final exam. Today we'll be doing some exam reviews and listen to a few of your extra credit assignments. Thanks in advance for being so patient with me while I explore the new world of Zoom. I should add that the professor and I don't plan on being too harsh on anyone, what with everything going on, global pandemic and whatnot.
Yeah, the prof should have just passed us all and ended the semester early, but okay.
I don't know. I like having some kind of end to my year.
It's definitely not how I thought my first year of university would go.
Oh, my first time in Canada.
I mean, it definitely sucks. All of my clubs ended a while ago. Plus, I had to go home early. I don't know what next year's going to look like.
How are you already worrying about next year? Aren't we all just trying to get through the next few months?
Totally. I don't know how I'm getting back to England.
Well, okay, at the very least, I think we can all make it through this class. Now, nobody else emailed me or the prof ahead of time, so it's just you 5 who signed up for the final extra credit presentation.
Out of curiosity, where's the prof?
Oh, well, so when the university closed and the lockdown started, your professor left the city. He's up in his cottage and there's no Wi-Fi there, so he put me in charge.
That sucks for you.
I mean, I've been helping teach all semester, so it's just like a final project for me too.
You're pretty optimistic, but
I think we'll be able to make it through the presentations just fine. And then all that's left is the final exam, which reminds me, I was thinking of giving you 5 a hint for the exam as an extra bonus, because I know it's a lot right now to take on even more work. So do you want me to talk first, or do we want to do the presentations first? Anyone have a preference?
you can go first.
All right. Well, I haven't prepared too much for the class, so it's kind of a chance for you to ask questions. I can tell you now that the major essay question is going to involve the Hamlet boom. Can anyone tell me anything about that period? Okay, Colin, can you name 3 authors from the Hamlet boom?
Ondaatje, Atwood, and Munro.
No points for originality there.
Hey, I wasn't asked for the masthead from a copy of the Fiddlehead.
Perhaps you could provide us with 3 different authors. It was a rather large part of the curriculum.
Well, it had to be. There was literally no literature before then.
Give us a hot take we haven't heard before.
Okay, anyone care to take a stab at why there was a boom?
The government.
Everyone loves government-mandated culture.
We're almost incapable of creating art unless the government tells us to.
I don't exactly think there was no art. Actually, there was a lot of writers before the Hamlet boom.
I guess you had Anne of Green Gables, and then you have one government-mandated commission, and Voila, culture.
It wasn't really that simple. And you had way more than Anne of Green Gables. Half this course was about early Canadian literature that wasn't Anne of Green Gables.
It's a good CBC show, though.
Weirdly trying to be woke, though.
What's weird about being woke?
It's just like the liberal government in a TV show. I'm pretty sure every Trudeau buzzword gets its own season. There was a lot of homosexual tension for a while, and then a season on multiculturalism, and then all of a sudden residential schools. Not that we shouldn't be dealing with those things, but within the confines of neoliberalism, what are we actually accomplishing, if not, well, I guess the entrenchment of the state?
It's too early in the Zoom call for this.
I mean, if you wanted to write a show about racism, you didn't have to set it in the Victorian era.
This is a fiction class, not a TV class.
If only we learned enough about 20th century fiction to make an argument about it.
It's okay. Anne of Green Gables will not be on the exam. So, Bailey, you mentioned the Massey Commission. Care to explain a bit more about it?
Well, I guess. So you had this cultureless land. Well, obviously not cultureless, just that the government decided to get rid of all the culture already there.
You just stick to the report?
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the prime minister at the time was Louis Saint Laurent, and he...
No, wait, isn't that a body of water?
No, that's the St. Lawrence.
The same guy, though, right?
Same guy. One's a river.
Can we get back on track? Donna, continue. And please, no more interruptions.
Okay, so the prime minister realizes that Canada's, well, it's not competing with the US, right?
It's a culturally stagnant backwater.
Well, that's harsh. So I guess he decides that he wants Canada to have a strong artistic scene. And after years of reactionary conservative government, he decides it's time that we move the country forward.
Some things never change.
And he picked Vincent Massey to run the report because I don't really know why, actually.
He was a rich guy.
Oh, cool. And yeah, Massey comes up with the report to figure out how to make Canada a stronger country culturally, and the government, over time, adopted Massey's recommendations to strengthen the CBC, fund universities more, and establish the National Library of Canada and the Canada Council for the Arts.
They just told Canadians what their culture was supposed to be and made up a bunch of grants to fund it.
Well, if you throw enough grants at any problem, it'll be resolved.
Thanks for the summary there, Donna. Now we really should get to the presentations, but yeah, I did want to help you out a little on the exam. So yeah, it's good to know what the boom was, how it started, and a couple of the big authors of the period. And it looks like Zoom's going to work out well, so that's a relief. So I think we might as well just jump right into the presentations. And remember that we don't have a long time. These aren't supposed to be super intensive. It's just an easy way to get some extra marks. And I'd like to add now that I know nobody really wants to be doing class over Zoom, so it would be great if we could keep interruptions and side conversations to a minimum to help us get through this class as smoothly as possible. Oh, all right, Bailey. So you are the first to present. I have to say I was surprised that you picked the topic that you did.
Well, I have a lot to say about colonial literature.
And I should say now, thank you for tackling the subject. I know it's not always the most interesting stuff, but I've always thought that there was a lot to uncover in these things. I always found them to be foundational, but I'll let you take the floor now, so to speak.
Okay, so I know in class we read Susanna Moodie, and that was most of our colonial literature. And I know you're thinking, if all the writing is like Susanna Moodie, then I'm glad we didn't read any more. And when doing research for my presentation, I found that most authors were as bad or worse than Susanna Moodie. So you're right, be glad we didn't read anymore.
Excuse me, but where are you going with this?
It'll make sense soon. Okay, show of hands, who here hates Susanna Moodie?
Yep.
Exactly. And what do we hate about her?
She was so boring.
It was just about like living in the wilderness. There wasn't even a plot, and she didn't even do a good job of living in the wild. Like, she was just annoying about it.
Those are both solid points. But as I'm sure you know, the worst thing about Susanna Moodie is her role in the development of the racist, colonial, racist nation state.
Oh, God, we don't need to do this.
You asked me to analyze her book, and I did.
I believe the professor asked you to discuss Moody's views on the development of a unique culture in the bush in the years she lived there.
Well, I thought about doing that.
What about it?
But
I mean, you were assigned it.
she complains about being a pioneer the whole time, and besides, how can you ignore her role in the creation of a genocidal nation state? I don't think the development of culture in the bush worried Moody much as long as the culture already there went away.
I mean, Susanna Moody's books are an incredible look into the life of a pioneer woman, a valuable testament to colonial Canada.
I tried to take that perspective because that's pretty much what the prof taught us. But I realized that's such a bad way of looking at it. It's not some romance of Canadian identity. It's just a bunch of stupid people in the woods, and we've been scared of forests ever since.
You mean the garrison mentality?
Pretty racist way of looking at things. Like, oh, I'm so scared of being killed in the woods. Well, I wonder who pissed off the people in the woods in the first place. Susanna Moody is the first example of some white lady crying over problems that she invented. And then we read her book, and the prof is like, this is it. This is all you'll ever need to know about Canada.
I'm sure it wasn't said quite like that.
No, it really was.
He's the first writer who figured out that Canadians are supposed to have some special relationship to the land. She did a really messed up job of it. Like, she isn't afraid of the bush, she's afraid of the people in the bush, and that's a lot more problematic.
This isn't really what you were assigned.
Look, if I am supposed to argue that there is a little bit of Susanna in all of us, I don't want to do that. I don't want to keep dragging people like her into the 21st century. There were a lot of 19th century female travel writers, and we don't need to focus on the worst one.
There were more of them?
Yeah.
Really wasn't the point of the class. You were given an assignment and you didn't do it.
Well, I shouldn't have to do projects on racist colonizers.
Well, you won't make it far in Canadian literature then.
Besides, there were other women doing the same thing. Why can't we talk about them?
Because they're all boring.
What did they even talk about? Canada didn't even exist until 1967.
You mean 1867, right?
You have a lot to learn about Canada.
Anyway, there's Susanna Moody's sister, Catherine Partrail, who maybe is a bit better, but pretty much on par.
No, she's way better.
Why do you have an opinion on every Canadian writer ever?
Oh, well, Catherine Partrail is cool because she gets into a lot of details about pioneer life, and she generally does it better than her sister. It's cool to know how people actually lived back then, you know? Plus, I think you could actually survive by following her book, Backwoods of Canada.
Decent social distancing tactics, I'll give them that.
I think I'd rough it in the bush over this Zoom lecture.
Then we have the top tier female travel writer, Anna Brunell Jameson.
Why is she in this presentation?
You told me to talk about colonial literature.
I assumed we would stick to the things we discussed in class.
Well, maybe if we talked about better people in class, I wouldn't have to bring in other authors.
What's your argument, Ian?
That she's the best one.
And what makes her the best?
Oh, glad you asked. Well, Jameson was able to handle herself among the colonial elite, but she was also not afraid to travel on her own to the absolute fringes of the colony. You know, she was one of the world's first art critics, an expert on German literature, and then she's in Toronto in the 1830s, as if that isn't the worst place in the world, and she still makes a good go of it, and then she spends the summer adventuring and writing all about it. She was a proto-feminist, a daring woman, certainly not of her time.
I mean, you can't choose your authors based on how badass they are.
Frankly, when it comes to 19th century female travel writers, yes, I can. Look, there's no point in always bringing these authors back up. There must be writers from this century that we can read, and they'd be better than Susanna Moody.
Well, don't jump to conclusions.
I know these books might be boring. I know I have to read them too, but they are essential for our understanding of early Canada.
And unfortunately, it still says everything about us now.
I mean, it is unfortunate that we can't move past some things, but can't you see why they'd be important to read now?
Better people are saying better things now. If you want to make an argument about the bush, well, you don't have to read a grouchy white woman is all I'm saying.
I mean, there is a value to getting right to the source text. Even contemporary critics are working with old texts by starting you off with these texts like these we're helping you develop your own opinions. There is a point to the curriculum.
The whole curriculum needs an overhaul.
Oh.
I mean,
TA frozen.
This isn't a fight that I want to get involved in. And besides, we're out of time. We still have 3 presentations to get through. Unfortunately, this wasn't supposed to be an opinions-based presentation, so I'm not super sure how grading this is going to go. Okay, Donna, you're the next one to present.
Are you sure it was supposed to be a presentation? I don't think it said that in the instructions that it had to be.
Your prof said it was supposed to be a short extra credit presentation.
I really don't think it ever said that, but I actually wrote a short essay. Well, maybe not all that short.
Well, Donna, I'll read your essay if you want and factor that into your grade, but you will have to present something. Can you maybe summarize your essay for the class?
Probably. Just give me a second. Okay, I think I'm good to go. So, my presentation topic, it was short story cycles in Southern Ontario Gothic. I think they're really cool, and it was lots of fun reading the books for this presentation. I know we wrote the definitions down somewhere, but just so we're all on the same page. A short story cycle is a collection of short stories that all build on each other. So instead of a random collection of stories, there's a connection thread between them. So the book's overall themes are developed in each story. Southern Ontario Gothic is a lot like American Southern Gothic, but in Canada. Southern Ontario Gothic essentially uses elements of repression, desire, trauma, deviant behavior, or even the supernatural to explore racial, gendered, religious, and political views. This sort of puritanical repression explains why things go so insane in Southern Ontario Gothic stories. How's my time?
Oh, you just started.
Okay, good. Well, I'll try to hurry along anyways.
Thank you.
So I decided to focus on Stephen Leacock and Alice Munro as great short story cycle writers, but there are plenty of others, so maybe we can talk about them later if there's time. I wanted to start with Stephen Leacock's Sunshine Sketches of a Little Town, written in 1912. It's not the first short story cycle, but it's the first really big one. Sunshine Sketches is set in the small town of Mariposa, and within the stories, there are hilarious exaggerations of small town life. For example, when there is a federal election in the last two stories, the narrator says that the town of Mariposa was, of course, the storm center and focus point of the whole turmoil. Stephen Leacock sure did have a way with words. Next book, bless you. His next book, Arcadian Adventures of the Idle Rich, focuses on an American city, so it's quite different from the small town Ontario setting of Sunshine Sketches. These short stories are still humorous, but are much more biting and harsh than Sunshine Sketches, commenting on greed, hypocrisy, and pride. You can definitely see that Leacock prefers a small town over the big, money-focused city. A skill that Leacock did well was making serious topics hilarious, which I personally find cool and inspiring because where I'm from, most people just know Stephen Leacock as the high school and not as the great satirical genius of a man the high school got its name from.
I had no idea.
Now we are going to add some girl power to this presentation.
Yay.
It's time for Alice Munro, another well-known Canadian short story writer who is worthy, wonderful, and astonishing. She published Lives of Girls and Women in 1971, and it's a series of interconnected stories with a strong feminist voice. The story is essentially a coming-of-age story of the protagonist, Del Jordan, growing up in the Southern Ontario town of Jubilee. Lives of Girls and Women can definitely be seen as a feminist piece of work. A quote from the book that stands out to me, said from Del Jordan's mother, is, "There is a change coming in the lives of girls and women. All women have had up till now has been their connection with men." It's powerful to hear such a bold statement from a female character. Some people like to argue that Lives of Girls and Women is a novel, but those people are wrong. Alice Munro has a timelessness to her stories that can definitely make an impact on the world today. Okay, so now I'm going to move on from short story cycles to Southern Ontario Gothic.
Hi, sorry, I had a question.
I think we'll save the questions until the end. And Donna, just keep an eye on the time, okay?
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll try to speed along.
Thank you.
So for Southern Ontario Gothic, I wanted to focus on one author, and I picked him because he's a contemporary writer who's published most of his books this decade. Well, last decade, but you know what I mean. I picked Andre Alexis, who's a Trinidadian Canadian author, and I got serious Ontario Gothic vibes from him. Pastoral is the first novel out of 5 in Alexis's Quincux cycle. Pastoral deals mostly with faith, which already makes it seem not entirely current, you know? The main character, Father Christopher Pennant, lives in a small rural village in southwestern Ontario. He is a priest, and he becomes involved trying to help 2 of his younger churchgoers who are tangled in a messy love affair. This novel was actually a finalist for the Writers' Trust of Canada Prize. even more Southern Ontario Gothic is his most recent book, Days by Moonlight. The novel focuses on the character Alfred Homer and his professor friend who journey throughout Southern Ontario and come across Black residents who speak only sign language in the day, since they are forbidden to talk, and towns that have cabin burning competitions every year. And that's just a few of the interesting things that they encounter. The book battles with the idea of what is real. I personally feel that Andre Alexis stands out because these cycles of books were published so recently, and they are so deeply connected to the uncertainty of what it means to be Canadian while still representing Southern Ontario in a fascinating and captivating light. I feel so connected to Alexis for exploring these topics, especially since he's a Black author with Caribbean roots. He is for sure someone who is broadening the horizons of literature. With that, I conclude my presentation. If there is anything that I have learned, it's definitely that Canadians have a way with words when it comes to short story cycles. The amount of specificity, relatability, and good old-fashioned narrative writing really brightens a short story cycle and a Southern Ontario Gothic tale. These published prints are forever going to be in Canadian history, and that is something special. The end.
Encore.
I really don't want to follow that.
Very well done, Donna. I especially liked you bringing in Andre Alexis, and I think you did a great job of combining literary analysis with personal connection, as opposed to just leaning on the latter. Now, any questions?
Yeah, actually, yes, may I? Sorry.
Go ahead.
It's about short story cycles. So you started with Stephen Leacock, an ardent imperialist, by the way, but you noticeably skipped Duncan Campbell Scott's In the Village of Viger, and I was just wondering why that was.
Well, time mostly. It's a good short story cycle, but I feel like I had more time to talk about. I feel like I had more to talk about with Leacock's books. I really like the stories though, and it is the first short story cycle, so that's important.
That's all you have to say about him?
No, Sam. Thank you, Donna. Let's move on to the next presentation.
No, come on. Don't you have anything else to say?
No, I think Sunshine Sketches does everything In the Village of Viger does, but better.
What are you talking about?
She doesn't know that Duncan Campbell Scott literally invented residential schools.
Wait, what? Is that true?
Yeah. So Duncan Campbell Scott was a public servant. He was the head of the Department of Indian Affairs, as it was called at the time.
And this is common knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And we still learn his stupid story cycle. Is that illegal?
Mm-hmm. Duncan Campbell Scott should definitely be illegal, but no, he'll always be mandatory literature. Welcome to
Wait, is Duncan Campbell Scott canceled? Will he still be on the exam?
No,
I'm just going to say that if you're the chief architect for cultural genocide, maybe we shouldn't read your books. The death tolls at that school were so high. I cannot believe that I read that man's books.
Hey, so now that we're all on the same page, I hope we can all agree that Duncan Campbell Scott was a flawed individual.
Flawed?
Purple, we'd even read his books.
I obviously knew.
What?
I did know that Duncan Campbell Scott was a racist and a genocidal murderer, for the record.
You knew?
Of course I knew. I always do my research. I chose not to include him because I didn't want to give him any more of a platform than he already has.
Fair enough. Thank you again.
I'm sorry. It's so messed up that we're still going to be tested on the Village of Viger.
I didn't write the exam.
Why are you always so negative, Sam?
Well, you can't exactly be positive about genocides, Donna. It's problematic on so many levels that we even read Scott's book at all. Then to not even discuss what he's really famous for is just so criminal.
It was a presentation on short story cycles, and I only had so much time, so I picked a few cycles to talk about. And I figured that talking about Scott wasn't necessary. Like, I just tried to pick the least problematic books. You can't really blame me for wanting to chill during a pandemic.
Blame the pandemic, yes.
Probably every writer we've studied is a bad person in some way. But you don't always have to tear all of it down. It's easy to do, but you don't have to do it all the time. I'm allowed to like Canadian literature. You're right. Duncan Campbell Scott fucking sucked, and it would be really nice if we could just have one unproblematic author. But we're not going to get that. I liked his book. I liked all these books. It was really nice to read funny little stories about close-knit communities and this idyllic rural life, no matter how fake it was. It was a nice break from the news. Yes, Scott's a garbage human being, but maybe his book wasn't. Putting that whole train wreck of a human being aside, I really connected to the other books I read, especially these more modern short story cycles and the Southern Ontario Gothic books as well.
You connect with trauma, insanity, and sexual repression? Big mood.
Not exactly that stuff, okay? But at the surface level, at least, these books try to put such an emphasis on community while also leaving space for weird and magical things to happen. And yeah, there's a lot of insanity, but the nice stories are really nice.
Thanks for that, Donna and Sam. While maybe the tone of this discussion could have been a bit calmer, you both raised excellent points. We have time for one last question, and I hope I don't regret offering that.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Donna, given your defense of the books, how representative did you find them to be from your experience?
Like, not a lot? I don't know. All these books are a very old school look at the country that doesn't really stand up anymore. I think the most accurate thing about all these books is that at the end, the main character always leaves. Even all the books are set in the past, as if the writers knew they couldn't pull off their books in a modern setting. I mean, what would Jubilee even look like in 2020? I wouldn't want to read that. And Alexis's books were obviously escapism. Even without all the magical elements, they have such low stakes that it's almost like an antidote to how things are now. I think just how chill those stories are is what I liked about them, especially when you contrast them with most other racialized literature, which tends to be pretty heavy. It's nice to read Black literature about a magical road trip. I know it can't be real because almost nothing tragic happens in those books, but I guess that's what's so nice about it.
If I can add something, I don't think the books go far enough. They don't actually say anything.
Well, maybe you should learn how to read.
Okay.
I think they say a lot. I think it says a lot more about us that we expect our books to be so sad and full of trauma to say anything useful.
It's just realism, Karen.
Then there's definitely an argument for escapism.
Okay, let's take 2 minutes to stretch, and then we can continue with the next presentation. Colin and Emily, you two are presenting next.
Cool. What a morning. Yeah.
The presentation was very well researched, so good job. Kudos.
Thanks so much, Bailey. That's really nice of you to say. Yeah, I worked really hard on it, and your presentation was pretty good. I feel like if you actually focused on your actual assignment of what you were given, it would have been so much better. But besides that, it was okay. Yeah.
Once Donna, always Donna.
No, take it. Thanks.
Fucking hell, that cat.
Colin, did you
Yes.
I sent
What?
you an email. Did you get it?
An email? Was I'll have a quick check. When did you send it?
Like 10 minutes ago.
Okay. What's it about? Presentation, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, what else
Yeah.
would it
I don't know. There might have been some really funny meme that you might have just wanted to send via email for some reason.
Okay, well, it's the presentation. I put together like a slideshow.
Yeah.
Can you just like add like our thesis statements like at the end?
The thesis statements?
Yeah.
Which thesis statements?
The ones we talked about.
Like what? I mean, I know the thesis statement, obviously. I'm just making sure that we both know what the thesis statement is.
Also, Bailey,
Oh God.
I was wondering, what are you doing tomorrow night?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I was wondering if I could maybe come over and you could maybe teach me how to read. I really appreciate it.
I don't know if I'll be able to help.
Get wrecked.
Oh, shut up. You know. You wish. It's okay. I don't know how I made it into ENG 121 without knowing how to read yet.
Who the hell has a lecture on a Saturday?
So his name's Gary. Have we established? Oh,
Gary.
Hello. Hi. So it looks like
Hello.
we're all back. I hope everyone had a chance to get a little nicer. So Yeah, so I think we're just gonna. I think I'm gonna have to start laying down some ground rules here. It's gonna be getting a little out of hand. So it would be really nice if we kind of stuck to what's questions that have actually been discussed in the presentation. That would be great. So I think cool.
Well,
Yeah.
I really thought this was a group presentation. Emily said that we had to partner up, right?
We did.
Yeah, well, yeah, I did make it an option for you two both, and you said you were working together.
Funny, because I didn't know it was optional.
Should we just start?
Yeah, probably a good idea. I already started the timer, but I'll just reset it now. Ready now?
Presentation. We've got to get out.
Slideshow. Can you let me share my screen?
Yeah, I think I guess I have the power to do that.
There we go. Thank you.
Oh, for sure.
Brill. Tight.
Sorry.
It's just, present button. Cool. So our topic is Canadian modernism, focusing on the period of the 1920s up until 1959, with the publication of... Emily, press again with the publication of...
with the publication of The Double Hook, right? 1959, good year.
Right. So, modernism in Canada is a lot different from any other sort of modernism anywhere else in the world, mostly because it's really rather boring. Well, yeah, so... Well, we looked at Settlers of the Marsh as an example of Canadian modernism, and we sort of felt like there weren't any of the elements of modernism you find in other books. I mean, actually, we weren't really sure why it was modern in the first place.
May I just interject and ask if you actually attended any of the lectures on the subject?
Wasn't that the night that the prof got like really sleepy and he let us all go home early?
Yeah, I think it was that one.
Hey, I'm beginning to realize there's no winning in these presentations. All right, I have a question. Were there any modern elements you found in the story?
Well, not really. I mean, it was very realistic and plainly written. There's absolutely nothing experimental about it. And it was all about farming, which isn't all that modern.
Now that you mention it, I don't even think there were tractors.
Didn't they dig all their wells by hand?
Not very modern at all.
Yeah, I mean, like, isn't modernism supposed to be like Faulkner and Virginia Woolf? Like, I guess the main character goes pretty insane, which is kind of modern, right?
Oh, look, Donna, it's one of your favorite things.
Oh my god, I made one comment. Please, let it go.
Hey, can we get this back on track? Some of us seem to forget that Zoom isn't exactly like whispering in the back of the class. Okay, Colin. Frankly, your complaint about Settlers of the Marsh is inaccurate, but noted. Besides, weren't you also assigned the double hook? That certainly meets your rather limited parameters of modernism.
Yeah. It was definitely everything I expected modernism to be. Emily actually did that part of the presentation.
So the double hook. It's Canada's first modernist novel, maybe even the great Canadian novel. It's about, well, I don't know, it's like about this family living in this small town in BC, and their mom dies like on the first page. Well, she's killed, I think.
You think?
Look, I'll be honest, I've got no idea what happened in this book, and I did read it, and it wasn't that long. I read the whole thing, but reading it did nothing. Like, the book felt really disconnected, I guess. Like, nothing connected with the stuff before it, and all of it was just symbolism, like one symbol on top of another on top of another. It was like some myth that you like couldn't even read.
Yeah, totally. I mean, James kills the mum in the first page, and you hardly even notice.
At least we figured out that very important part of the plot. And in your defense, your point about myths isn't that far off.
What's the point of a book if you can't even read it?
It's literally so important to Canadian writing. How could you say that?
Not understanding something does not make it important.
Tell that to every English prof ever.
Half the university departments would fold if we all realized that.
True.
Okay. What is it about Zoom that makes you also like this?
Global pandemic.
I would like to know just one thing you got out of Settlers of the Marsh. Then I'll ask you the same thing for the double hook. Anything from these books.
I just have to ask, what did early Canadian authors have against people enjoying their books? I'm sorry, but did they purposefully want to make things not too enjoyable? Like, is this supposed to be the basis of our national literary identity?
Like, I really fucking hope not.
Okay. I'm gonna start meeting people, okay? Once I figure out how.
I'm sorry, but is shooting your wife in the Manitoba Prairie something that we're proud of?
Okay, I can fail all of you.
I mean, I'm going back to England this semester anyway, so...
Lots of hating in the women in the book, too.
Emily, say one thing I can attach a grade to.
Shit. The book's treatment of women and mental illness connects it to larger trends in literature dealing with new modern themes.
Women.
Works for me. Now, Colin, anything. Like, anything.
Well, I found that the books had a serious obsession with land ownership and who can accumulate the most land. And it's quite obvious that this book pushes a colonial model that a man's social standing and personal worth is intrinsically connected to his ability to work and manage the land.
Really wasn't expecting that out of this presentation.
Not much is said about who actually owns the land, though.
Okay, we really are out of time.
I mean, I'd imagine the first inhabitants of the land were dispossessed at some earlier point before the beginning of the novel, and Frederick Grove really doesn't feel the need to discuss any of that.
You know what? I got just enough out of this to assign a grade. And I will say to Colin specifically that you did really touch on something big, and I'd suggest you keep thinking of that in your future studies. Emily, you had some very nice opinions.
We came up with that whole thing about the land together.
Why didn't you lead with that?
Because there's like a lot going on right now. And I want to point out that reading 1920s novels about farming isn't the best way to spend my time. I will. I don't know how to say this nicely, but modernism didn't seem all that important in Canada, and it doesn't seem that important now.
I guess I hoped you'd get more out of this class than just that. Well, okay, we have one more presentation to do, and then this entire course is done until the final exam. So let's just go right into Sam's presentation, and I hope that we can wrap things up nicely.
Oh, I don't think you'll like it then.
Unsurprisingly, I suspected as much. All right, I am as ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, so my presentation is on contemporary Canadian literature, and I decided to take this opportunity to talk about all the things we should have discussed, but the prof decided wasn't important. The question that we should all be asking ourselves is, whose stories are getting told, who is telling those stories, and who has the authority to tell those stories? I did a lot of research on contemporary Canadian literature, and what I found from really researching a lot of different sources is that the focus of the conversation shouldn't be on the books, but who's writing the books and who gets to control what's actually published. CanLit is not just exclusionary, but openly hostile to inclusion. And when threatened with inclusion, because it is viewed as a threat, the institutions close rank and work incredibly hard to discredit, destroy, and exclude any and all other voices. That's a good thesis statement, so you'll have to pass me.
Sam, you're going to fail this class.
It's pass fail, it'll be fine on the exam. We read a book a week, and at no point in the semester did we bother to talk about anything that's going on around Canadian literature. The prof taught us as if there's no outside world. We're reading Canadian literature after years of disgusting scandals, and the prof never once thought to mention any of them. If I want to do one thing in this presentation, is to teach you that our class can't happen in its own little bubble.
Forward this presentation to the professor?
I mean, I assumed you would. Okay, we read mostly white authors in this class, and okay, that's bad enough. But the professor never once bothered to raise any questions about why. we read mostly white authors. And yeah, the easy answer to that is that BIPOC writers don't have the access to publish their stories. But you'd think at a university where I know there's a diverse range of people, there would be some focus, any focus, on creating space for other people.
You seriously overestimate what a university does.
Oh, no. Like, I know it's optimistic, but I'm trying to have some hope here. There isn't just a lack of diverse voices, there's an open exclusion of them. Even though the cornerstone of Canadian liberalism is supposed to be multiculturalism.
Don't you think it's improving at all?
Not really. Even just looking at Toronto, the demographic currently has a majority of visible minorities, and I can't really see that reflected in literature on any scale. The space just isn't there. And whenever a different voice is included, it so often fits within the existing framework so nicely that it doesn't even really feel that new.
So what? Would you just rather we not have any diversity at all? You just ruined your whole argument.
No, diversity within the framework is essential, but we need to seriously start thinking about the framework itself. Nobody's doing that. The audience is always the same, even if the person on stage is different.
But you're wrong there too. Think about when I talked about connecting to Andre Alexis's books. The speaker and the audience are so different from the mainstream.
And he literally named his book Pastoral. Look, even if the person on stage and the person in the audience are different, what's being said is the same shit. Actually, this Indigenous writer I read, outside of class I should mention, because Indigenous writer, named Alicia Elliott said the same thing. Yeah, there's an increasing number of diverse writers, but they have to tailor their book to white tastes or they won't sell. They have to write books that fit into what white people want to see. Besides, it's not like every attempt at diversity works out. The first piece of Canadian literature I remember reading was a book by Joseph Boyden, who's a super popular author. And in the book, one of the white characters tells an Indigenous woman he's going to fuck the heathen out of you in this church while he's fucking her. And what the fuck is that? How is that okay? And we've been holding up Boyden for years as diversity, but then he does that? I'm sorry, if a man of color said that to a white woman, he'd go to jail. But we all accept it as okay in this book. I don't care if it's historically accurate or like whatever. I think most high school students are just going to take it at face value. And if that counts as representation, then we have a much bigger issue because we're actually underrepresenting good representation.
I guess what I liked most about Alexis's books was that he wrote good representation. Like, his books are almost so nice that it doesn't even read as racialized literature. I don't want to read about trauma every time a person of color is involved.
Exactly, but while we're on the topic, we barely read anything that was contemporary. We spent 3 classes on the entire 21st century.
I have to agree. Why is there so much focus on all this super boring stuff from like 100 years ago? We really should be reading more contemporary stuff.
At least with literature published this decade, it has a chance of being less problematic.
Yeah, I mean, I took an entire modern British course, and we only ever got up to the 1930s. So honestly, this class did better than that.
Yeah, that was the modernist period. Kind of the point of the class.
I think that the point is that it doesn't hurt to read things that actually reflect the country and the literature as it stands right now.
Well, the issue is that all that colonial stuff does reflect the country where it stands now.
Yeah, Boyden thought it was totally okay to write about a white guy fucking the heathen out of an Indigenous woman this decade. I don't think we're really making any progress, and there still aren't spaces for BIPOC writers in Canadian literature.
You think I don't know that?
It's a problem that we're trying to make CanLit exist at all. Sure, part of it's the people in it, but we're so incapable of moving past this pointless idea of a national literature.
Okay, don't try to quote cruel optimism at me, all right? If you want to jack up all these controversies, say something original.
Why are you always asking me to defend these things in this academic way? I know what's wrong with the stuff we're reading. I don't need to give you a thesis statement on it, although I should point out that I already did.
What you're arguing for is multiple literatures in place of one literature.
Yeah, like how can one literature pretend to represent so many different people? At this point, it's stupid to think one CanLit can even speak for everyone. And you're still trying to crush this argument into this dominant way of doing things that isn't the only way to do things. And you just haven't realized that yet.
None of us did the kind of presentation we were expected to do. Doesn't that tell you anything?
A change is coming in the lives of students and scholars. Before this, all we had was our connection to books.
Look, this is a conversation that's been going on for years. There's a precedent for the stuff you're saying, and it's a fight that can always use more voices.
I'm sorry. If this conversation has been going on for so long, why do we still have the whitest syllabus ever? There are Black, Indigenous, and POC authors winning awards right now, and it's as if they don't even exist.
Well, I mean, if they're winning awards, that's kind of a step in the right direction.
No, it's not as simple as that. Gwen Benaway wrote a poem saying that she'll never win an award. And yeah, she did end up winning something, but her default position was that Hamlet will never recognize her. Why? Because she's not white and she's not cis. Essie Goyen said her first Giller Prize win felt like a fluke, and she was sure she had no chance of winning a second one. And I don't think she was just being humble. And there's a point where it's just too little too late, and I think we're way past that.
I hoped that university would have its finger on the pulse of what's actually going on in the world, but over the course of the year, I haven't been convinced of that. Not that we should just be reading big award winners, but it makes you question why we're ignoring them.
We still celebrate these authors as if we never expected them to win, because we didn't. And when diverse writers are winning awards, we still choose these useless old books over them.
I still don't know if throwing everything out is the answer. Like, there's a lot in those books, you know? I think if there's an issue is that we don't engage with them. I don't want to sound like a big nerd, but we needed to study them more than we did. We need to know how they fit into our current world.
I got one thing from this class. It was that we don't exactly apply literature to the real world.
Funny enough, my first year philosophy class kind of touched on this.
What, the Hamlet sucks?
No, just the difference between always talking about things and thinking about things and being active and involved.
So, applied literature studies. I could be onto something.
But it does make sense. I mean, if we read these books because they're important, it's important to talk about them, about ways to act on them, right? Or act against them, in most cases.
That's especially true when we read so much colonial bullshit. If there's value in reading these things, it's the value of having an in-depth knowledge for what you're fighting against.
But that's where reading more contemporary stuff comes into. If we're supposed to be learning something about Canada, why don't we learn about Canada today?
I feel like I know more about 1960s Canada than 2020. And I know things have definitely changed.
Have they?
When I came to the university's open house, the undergrad chair said that an arts degree prepares you to deal critically with the modern world in ways that engineering and science just doesn't. Maybe it's not a professional degree, but it's supposed to teach you how to really deal with society. And then, we don't talk about anything contemporary. Sam was right when he said that we have to talk about what's going on outside of these books.
I'm surprised even you agree with throwing out the curriculum.
We don't need to throw it all out. We just need to talk about things better.
I'm sorry. We should definitely be throwing out what we have. You can't just toss one writer of color on a syllabus and say you've solved the problem.
Yeah, you can't just toss one diverse writer in there and call it a day. But burning it all down seems, I don't know, maybe you could play writers off each other. Compare and contrast, make it so that we're still reading some of these classic books, but we have other perspectives too.
Or that we're at least reading good criticism of the literature instead of just all these old books.
But I doubt we'll ever get to that. Our prof's attempts at diversity were, what? Mennonites?
It does almost feel worse to read, one book by Thomas King and then everyone else is white. At that point, you might as well not even try.
Yeah, at least teach someone like Alicia Elliott or Billy Ray Belcourt or any young Indigenous person. We don't have their voices represented at all in the class or in the books we read.
And we'd still have white people teaching us about them.
Because that's everyone in the entire department. Seriously, is there a wider department?
Syllabus matches the class, I guess.
Nothing I read this year was important. We're taught things in a vacuum. Here's the book. Don't worry, students, there's no outside world. It's even worse than all that ivory tower stuff people talk about. We don't even lounge around criticizing things when we should, let alone take any action about it. It's a fucked system.
Maybe we can start with fewer books by horrible people and improve from there.
Something students can connect with.
That's exactly it. Something students can connect with, but we're not all angry Mennonites and high school girls stuck in small towns. Surprise! I grew up a lot different than Del Jordan, so where's my book?
I think there are some universal values.
I mean, yeah, even I connected to some of the stuff.
Mostly the English people running around the woods, right?
Well, I never felt more Canadian than when I went camping.
There, you solved Susanna Moody.
It's this thing about universal values that trips me up. I get what you're saying, but it doesn't work like that in real life. It's not even just that I want to read books that I can relate to, though, I do, but the books we are reading make no sense in the Canada we're living in. I never saw myself or my family or any of my community represented in any of these books. All the books we read have no idea of what the rest of the world is like. All of the books we read have one idea of who's supposed to be in this country and who you're supposed to be in this country, and a university shouldn't be pushing that.
It needs to be serious change from the top down.
Or we could just teach ourselves, like in those experimental colleges, like no grades, no exams, no professors teaching us awful books.
I mean, that just sounds like an awful lot of drugs.
Maybe that's what Canlet needs.
I thought that was the whole Canlet boom.
Looks like someone's passing the exam.
I'm not against learning some things on my own, but I'd like to study things in the classes I'm paying for.
Make tuition free.
You're really having a different conversation than the rest of us, eh?
It's always a timely conversation.
Well, especially because university is going to be online for who knows how long. They won't actually charge us full tuition fees for online classes, would they?
Knowing the universities, yes, they would, but it's nice to hope.
I don't think they do that to us.
You have a lot to learn about university. All of you, actually.
I actually kind of forgot you were in this call.
It's better to sit back and listen sometimes.
I'm surprised you didn't end it.
This is probably the healthiest debate we've had all class.
You've been through this all. Don't you have any thoughts on the subject?
The professors are the problem, Donna.
Okay, you can stop now.
No, but I'm not wrong. I didn't create the syllabus. Our professor did. We could have read all contemporary BIPOC authors, but we didn't. And that's what pisses me off the most. It isn't hard to make a better syllabus, but nobody wants to.
So we should fire all the professors.
Teach ourselves. That's what I'm saying.
Or talk to your professors? You didn't think that was an option, did you?
You really don't get it, do you? We have had this conversation before. Why do you think I did my whole presentation on everything we should have learned? Because I've tried to talk to the professor about this issue and it went nowhere. I was completely ignored.
It's true, you're not the first to hear this argument.
I could have walked in there with a full reading list and the prof would have thrown it in the garbage. So yeah, I've tried talking.
It's exhausting fighting every prof in the department. It's obvious we can't change things on our own. We can't even change one prof's mind.
You said yourself that people have been working on this for years.
Well, change takes time.
Yeah, if anyone actually cares to change it.
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just the master's student here who thinks about all these same issues almost all the time. Like, making Canlit better is everyone's job. There's whole books on the subject, and you're already doing that job. You said the profs are the problem, but they're still the ones deciding who gets taught in class. Talking about these problems with each other isn't going to bring about the changes you're looking for. There are more important people in this department.
But how long are we supposed to keep doing this job? I shouldn't have to fight so hard to get all the problematic shit out of our classes.
I mean, you said it yourself, actually. When the institution is threatened, it closes ranks and works hard to destroy the threat. You yourself named inclusion as a threat.
That just sounds like you're offloading responsibility.
All I'm hearing is that we can try all we want and it's not going to change anything.
I don't really know what else to tell you. It's definitely not a problem we can solve in one Zoom lecture. I've been to entire conferences that haven't managed to push the needle.
So there's nothing we can do.
No. Find the books you want to read. I know they're out there. And twist everything else to make it say what you want. And don't grow complacent. Keep the pressure on, but make sure you have a reading list to fall back on when things become too much. For a whole community, I can guarantee you aren't alone.
The anti-Canlit book club.
Looks like we figured it out. Now, I will have to end this call eventually. You've all got lives to get back to. Thanks for the presentations. You'll all be getting A's.
They're getting A's?
Even though we didn't say anything we were supposed to.
No, you said a lot, and obviously you know what you're talking about. I'm glad none of you talked about what you were assigned. It would have been a boring final class.
And here I thought you hated us.
Well, I did, but listening to you all now, I realize that you're quite genuine about this. Might even go so far as to say you care.
Care about tearing it all down? Yes.
And I can't fault you for being passionate.
You did before.
All right. Several of you took your presentations to tell me that everything I helped teach you this year was incredibly boring, and that the entire field, my entire field, isn't worth your time. What you did here was a lot, I think.
Our passion should still count for something.
It does, and I hope you hold on to it. Now, I probably don't need to tell you that on the final exam, saying all this isn't going to get you a good grade. Sometimes you do have to pick your battles, but don't let summer break wear away your frustration.
But like Sam said, we can try all we want. It's not going to change anything.
And turn that frustration into organizing together. Just tell everyone you can what you told me on this call. It's not a perfect solution, but there isn't one. I know how exhausting it is not to see any progress and to keep fighting. People aren't built to be fighting every day, but you have to try or things will stay the same.
That's all you're going to say.
I don't think there's anything else to say.
I wish you good luck on the exam. That's about it.
And I shouldn't call out this bullshit on the exam?
You can. Maybe you should. But on the exam, no, it wouldn't go too well for you. Wait for a time when your final grade isn't on the line.
Doesn't really seem like the outcome we were hoping for.
It's been one Zoom call.
There's no quick answer.
Diversify the curriculum seems like a pretty quick answer to me.
There's no quick answer for the people at the top. If you want even a chance of them listening, you need to keep the pressure on. I know that sounds like a lot of work just to read better books, but the institution rarely gives up even a small fight. I don't know what else I could say, and we are way over time.
That's how we're leaving it?
Did you expect me to say we fixed the university? I can't do much more than you. Let's just hope it's enough. This class has gone way over time, and I wanted to say that I'm quite genuinely happy to see this. Realizing the flaws in what you're learning so early on isn't easy, and taking your final presentations to actually say something about it is impressive. Make sure the prof hears everything you said to me. Now remember, the exam is next Tuesday, so make sure you're prepared. I don't want all this hard work to go to waste. I'm happy you presented today. I hope to see you all in the fall, fighting your profs. I'd say read some Hamlet this summer, but I know most of you probably won't. So now, how do you end this meeting? Oh, there's the button.
Yay! Thank you everyone so much. Oh my gosh, it happened. Thank you so much for watching this live stream. We're going to be taking questions from the audience now. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, please feel free to have them open here. So maybe I should change this like this. Great. So yeah, if there's any questions, we're here to answer them. Yeah, good job, guys.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. We can do.
Wait, Major 7 has a question. Wait, there's so many questions.
Do we still do introductions again? Or?
Yeah,
I think
let's quickly go around and remind
people know who we
what our
are.
names are. So I'm Izzy.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Linus.
Hi, I'm Alicia.
I'm Jill.
And I'm Armand.
Fortunately, Jamie isn't able to be here for the talk back, but Jamie played, the role of Jamie.
No, the role of Bailey.
Yeah, well, the role of Bailey, sorry, that's what I meant. Live.
What a twist.
It's live. Okay. Great. So I got one question from Emily.
There's also one from Major 7.
Pardon?
Major 7 said, what inspired the writing of this piece?
Okay. Do
You
you want
don't like
to
Major.
take a stab at that, Ryan?
Well, I don't know. Izzy told me to write it. Sort of Izzy's writing monkey. Well, I mean, Izzy and I both took have English degrees and took a lot of Hamlet courses, and I think over the course of our degree, we have noticed the flaws, maybe is the nicest way to put it, in our curriculum specifically and in what we're learning. And just sort of what I would say is the very large gap between sort of like contemporary Hamlet, like who's writing where it stands now, and what we're being taught as students. I mean, you probably noticed a lot of this play was sort of about like what we're being taught more than like, oh, Hamlet sucks, which, you know, is not great, but that's, you know, but a lot of it was about like how our education maybe is lacking.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of the inspiration for this play on my part came on just like, I really loved my degree. I loved studying English literature. Like, that's not at all what I was trying to convey with this piece. It's more of like, it was a really alienating experience sitting in a classroom where I was definitely a minority, and like, you know, like coming from Toronto and going to a place where it wasn't as, you know, diverse, it felt very alienating for sure. And that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to convey with this play. Great. So let's move on to the second question that I saw. Emily said, loved it. Just wondering why you chose to make a play about Hamlet and why those authors in particular. So we kind of already answered the first part of the question, I think. So Ryan, do you want to talk a little bit about the authors?
Yeah. So, I mean, some of the authors we picked are definitely just like staples. With Stephen Leacock, like Sunshine Sketches, I have read 4 different times and I've written 3 different essays on it. Obviously ones like Duncan Campbell Scott are taught a lot, but with Scott, obviously, we're not really taught a ton about like, let's say his life outside of writing, just to keep it short. Obviously Alice Munro is a major name. Once in the colonial one, like talking about Susanna Moody is just a little bit more of a, honestly at this point, kind of like a meme. Like Susanna Moody is for a lot of people like the first Hamlet they read, and it's just sort of like a joke at this point.
Yeah.
She's not very good. Like she's so boring, but we always are taught this, and it's like she's very important, you know? And it's like, no, she's not. With the more when we get into like the modernist stuff, like again, Settlers of the Marsh, a big book, again, just a book about farming. So it's just kind of like as an example about how Canada was sort of, there was a cultural leg of Canada behind the US. When you get to the Double Hook is sort of the first modernist novel, sort of very big, like it's a very big novel for a lot of people. A lot of writers are very like, this one's important. I think Nick Mount was the one who said it might be Canada's, like the great Canadian novel. He said that in his book Arrival, the story of Hamlet, which is about the Hamlet boom in the 60s. When we get to more contemporary authors, again, it was really just an effort to be sort of showcasing as many diverse voices as possible that you would never really read. Like Andre Alexis doesn't come up too much in school. Alicia Elliott just published her book this year, A Mind Spread Out on the Ground, which I'd always highly, highly recommend. I love it. Billy Ray Belcourt is active right now. He's got like 2 books of poetry. So again, like I was just trying, with the contemporary ones, it was kind of just like cutting edge authors. I feel like I'm taking too much time, but you get the gist.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first part was definitely like things that we have read in classes, and then going into like the more modern stuff, we were trying to look for what we thought would be like a really like things that we wish we studied. Yeah. Okay. Great. So we have another.
We got a lot of questions.
Dana asks, who wrote the essay that Donna wrote and read out loud? Alicia.
Hi. So earlier on in the rehearsal process, we were all asked to do some research, and like I feel like we were kind of asked to write like our information and what we found. So I ended up writing an essay of everything that I discovered. I just assumed everyone else did that. And also with the whole pandemic going on, I don't have anything else to do really except write. So I basically wrote the essay, and then Ryan and Izzy looked through it, and I believe Ryan did most of the, I guess, editing and tailoring it more so towards Donna. But yeah, that's the story behind that.
Yeah, like definitely all of the actors had such an amazing part in bringing these characters to life. Like literally, like from the start, they created the basis of who these people are. So that was really cool. Great. I have a question from Nikki. Were there any unexpected challenges that arose while rehearsing and producing a play over Zoom? From a producer's point of view, I will say that it was very challenging because there is like no manual on how to do it. So that was really difficult. Fortunately, a lot of people were very, very nice and agreed to like sit down and talk to me and like explain like some of the things that they had done. So really it was like really a great way for everyone to like connect and talk to each other and share some knowledge. So that was really great. But does anybody want to talk more to that question?
I am going to chime in. Technical difficulties seem to be a huge thing in rehearsal, especially for on my behalf. At certain times, my Wi-Fi would cut out, things happened. So I think for me personally, this is the first play that I've ever taken part in Zoom. I think for the most of us as well, but I'm not going to speak for everybody because I don't know. But yeah, I would just say technical difficulties for me personally was a huge thing. Happy we made it through.
Yeah, honestly, I'm surprised that I forgot to mention this, but for the first 3 weeks, no one could hear what I could say. So, you know, it was a big improvement on the technical end when that was sorted out.
It's also different from rehearsing in your own home. So any interruptions that may happen in your house happen in rehearsal, which was really interesting.
My mom showed up with tortillas like twice, and I was like, stop it. We've had this conversation. Yeah, it was bad.
Am I back? Great. Awesome. Love Zoom. Great platform. Yeah, so I have another question. What a great show. How has your view of Canadian literature changed from the beginning of the project until now? I think I will give that over to the actors because I think that their relationship has, changed or possibly not changed the most.
I can get the ball rolling with that one. So I knew legitimately nothing about Canadian literature. Like nothing. I was like, what are you doing? Why are you auditioning for this? Okay, let's go. And I did. And similar to Lee, how Alicia wrote her essay for Donna, they gave us all homework where we had to like write essays. And I was like, no. And so I'm kidding. I did it. But I took English, and I had actually like a really problematic racist English teacher in high school, which like these sorts of conversations did happen, and our books weren't culturally diverse in any way. And yeah, like 3 Day Road was like that part of my character was something that I was like, why was that allowed? Was a personal thing that like came into the work. But I've learned what I learned about like most of the rest of the industries, that like representation isn't really where it could be. And there's like really beautiful literature that does exist. And there are actually way more BIPOC authors than I ever would have thought of. Like I never would have known who Billy Ray Belcourt or Alicia Elliott or any of these authors would have been had it not been for like Ryan and Izzy educating us on like, hey, here are the names you'll know, because there's like Margaret Atwood and Andre Andache and all those. And then there's like also all these other ones that are just like casually slipped under the rug. So like I knew that like we're not super diverse because I went to school and I went to university and I know what that's like. But yeah, I learned a lot about different types of writers that I don't think I typically would have, which was awesome.
Nice. Anybody else want to talk to that question? Linus, yes, no?
No,
Okay,
I'm just going to do this one.
We can move on.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
Oh, is he?
And she's frozen.
Is he
Oh,
on the
no.
press? Again, you
Well, the thing I like about an ice cream sundae.
Am I back?
you're back, Izzy.
Great. I'm glad this is going so smoothly. So the question was this play hard to adapt to an online stage? How did the actors have to change their style for the media? So originally this play was supposed to be something that was going to be actually staged, and it was going to be like a fringe show. And we wanted to have it kind of like as an immersive theater, because in Ottawa Fringe, they like are really close to the university. So we were like, we could just like have it in the lecture hall, and it would be like immersive, and everyone can come in and sit and like be the students in the class. And then obviously that wasn't able to happen. So I guess the way that we changed it, like changing the style, we basically had to change the main plot line. Instead of it being like a final class, it was like an optional like exam review, because we didn't want to like have a ton of people like on screen, like, you know what I mean? So it was, we had to change a lot of like why we were gathered in this space. But I like to think that it still kind of holds true to like this immersive theater experience, because like the actual set is Zoom, like the Zoom platform. So that's pretty cool. Ryan, anything from you?
I mean, honestly, like the biggest thing for me was that, like as Izzy mentioned earlier on, this play's been about a year-long process. I had most of the script written, and then Izzy was like, throw it in the garbage. And I was like, okay. So like a lot of like pretty much everything that you saw, obviously I lifted some parts from my script. The parts that I was like, that was pretty good, Ryan. I'm gonna keep that. But a lot of it was written like as we went along. Like rehearsals were like, I wrote the scene for the individual, and then we rehearsed it, and then that's how we went. And it was because we kind of had to adapt everything brand new, because like Zoom, even the format of a Zoom lecture is so different from the format of like a real life lecture. Or like Zoom theater is obviously so different from like physical site-specific theater, I guess. I guess we've now entered digital site-specific theater, which maybe somebody could write an essay about that one. But
Great. So we have another question about how the chat and screen share scenes would have been staged if not done over Zoom. And I think we kind of already answered that, in that this was like completely new and adapted to this specific format. So those scenes are very much like things that kind of happened in our rehearsals. And like, we were like, wouldn't it be funny if this happened? And that's kind of how those features evolved. Like you had, like from moving to platform, you had to like basically just take advantage of what we had on hand. Okay, Robin wants to know about the process of directing a play over Zoom, and what was the decision-making process like for using the different Zoom functions. So I directed the piece, but I think it was like really, really collaborative. Like overall, everybody kind of brought in what they wanted to do, and you know, those little like quirks that we wanted to bring in. It was really difficult. I think as an emerging artist and as someone who doesn't have like a ton of experience, it was very scary coming into this kind of land of the unknown. And yeah, so I think definitely conversations and dialogues with the actors, like outside of the rehearsal space, and just talking about like, who is this character? Because there's like a level of physicality that I have been taught as, you know, as a director to rely on that I just didn't have. So that was really interesting. And the decision-making process for the different Zoom functions, a lot of those are very like improv based. Like anything in the chat is probably like mostly improv based. The like break was like improv based. And I think those are like some of my favorite moments in this play. It's very like, you can really feel the human elements in like a kind of like very cold platform, you can really feel like the warmth of the humans in it.
I'll just add quickly that was actually the first time I've ever seen what they said on the break. Like when I leave, like I physically went away because I never wanted to know what was said about me. But now I do know.
I have just a few more questions. So Carly said, love this. Are there so many? Oh, that's just a comment. It's not a question, but thanks, Carly. Love the comment.
I can verify that like her comment is correct. Like I'm not an English major, and we had to take Canadian theater Canadian theater history. And for the first 4 rehearsals, I was like, I don't know anything about literature, but here are all these white playwrights, and there's no playwrights of color. And that was me for the first 4 rehearsals until they're like, okay, yes, great. Now we're doing lit. Anyways. You're right.
So I have 2 more questions. And I think those will be the last 2. So another one for the actors. How much and how do you all identify with your characters?
Ooh, I see.
And that's from Anissa. Anissa,
probably.
Great, love it.
I'm thinking. Let someone else go first.
Well, I was made to play an Englishman, which obviously I have no relation to whatsoever. It was such a foreign element to me, you know. But yes, no, I mean he's I don't know, he's just a character who is, you know, English and also very snarky and, you know, in general, you know, kind of a little bit of a penis, but you know, he's non-offensive. So yes, I feel I did relate with this character, and it wasn't too hard to get into, really.
I would kind of say the same. Like, it was really interesting because we were all, like our first rehearsal, we were assigned a couple novels to study and then do a presentation about, which I missed like the first 2 lectures, which I was like, this is so my character. Like every single thing we would contribute in rehearsal would contribute to what our character would be. And so, yeah, it was super interesting that like our own words. And I remember my presentation, I talked about like how I'd rather watch things on Netflix and how like some of the novels remind me of Schitt's Creek and how Schitt's Creek's way better though. And that this is just so boring and stupid and yada, yada, yada. And then that's who Emily turned out to be. So there you go.
Great.
I think honestly, like I love Donna's enthusiasm towards learning, and I relate to that aspect of her, and I love her, like her determination for education. But there are some things I don't necessarily relate to with everything she's saying. She seems a bit naive, but she's young. But honestly, I think I relate more to, like personally as like Alicia Plummer, I relate a little bit to Emily and Bailey. Like I'm a mix of those 2 characters. So yeah, that's my answer.
Lovely.
My character, I would say that I'm not like totally Sam, but I'm not totally not Sam. Like there's elements of me in there. I think like during the rehearsal process, they're like, you're the cool person of color. And I was like, that doesn't exist. Like that wasn't when you're in an all white, like elementary school and high school, or like the 2 people of color in your theater class. Like that's not what. So it was interesting. And I don't think that I'm like as mean. Like me and Alicia, I love you, Alicia, go at it in this show. So I think there's just like a lot of like anger and hurt in my character that like personifies itself through like bitterness at times, which I wouldn't think that I do. I hope I don't do. But overall, yeah, like the anger with the institution and this like relentless like fire and passion to try to like educate people. And one of my favorite parts is when Ryan's like, have you tried talking to your professors? And I'm like, yes, Ryan, we have. This has happened. They don't give a shit. So like those sorts of elements of like exhaustion that come through when trying to like work on changing systemically problematic institutions are relatable content. Otherwise, a little bit of a mix. Cool.
Ryan, do you want to share?
Technically, I acted, although I still never feel like I did. Like I feel like
this is your acting debut.
This is an acting debut for me. Thank you. admit, like the first rehearsal we ever did, taking off the assumption or like working on the assumption that the actors didn't know much about Hamlet. I did a giant lecture. I lectured for maybe 2 hours. And I think that tells you everything you needed to know. I guess I was just born to lecture.
That was one of my favorite rehearsal memories for sure, is just like Ryan talking about Canadian literature for 2 hours to a bunch of people who have never really experienced Canadian literature. But, you know, I think it was fun.
I think that we made some memories, I think.
It was memorable. I'll give you
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have the last question from Ryan. Not you, Ryan, but a different Ryan.
Myself.
Use the term Hamlet exclusively in reference to the canon, or rather the syllabus. Do you think the term itself excludes more diverse / recent authors that you've mentioned?
I guess this is directed towards me. Like, I think part of the reason I wrote this play, or had the idea to write it was a collaborative effort, but part of the reason why I guess I was involved was because, like, at least my university education in the English department, I shouldn't throw it under the bus, so it shall remain unnamed, was very was classical, kind of like, here's a book. We could do a little bit of close reading if you want. There's a historical element to it. Ooh. And then, like, you're given a lot of books. Like, one thing that kind of helped me focus on this, or focus on some ideas in the play, was a recent book called Refuse, Hamlet in Ruins. It's edited. I have it. It sits on my table.
Of course you do.
So many times does he mention a book and just pulls it into the screen, like there on his mantle.
It's edited by Hannah McGregor, Julie Rack, and Aaron Wunker. And it's a collection of essays about how Hamlet is just in ruin. Hamlet is a dumpster fire, is the term that they like to use. And I think, like, basing it off of them, like, there's this giant debate, which I have no pretensions to pretend to, like, be able to really comment on, that, you know, like, Hamlet is something that has to be thrown out entirely. Hamlet, it refers to this old white colonial institution, things like that. So working off of kind of what you said there about, like, does it exclude more diverse / recent authors? I honestly think in a lot of ways the term Hamlet kind of does. Hamlet, I think, largely refers to an industry that is intimately tied to the sort of, I'm gonna get a little too wacky, laughy here, but I mean, like, I think it's an institution that is very much tied to, you know, the sort of nation building project of Canada, which I think most of us can agree is not always great. And I think in a sense, like, that term Hamlet kind of does. And that's not to say that the term Hamlet, like, you couldn't say, well, as an author who lives in Canada, my book, regardless of who I am, regardless of my background, is Hamlet. I think that counts for a lot, but I still feel like Hamlet as an industry and as an institution is largely built around, like is very, very closely tied to sort of this colonial sort of, or like the big award shows, you know, or like we'll pick a token author now and then, or like what Armand's character says about Alicia Elliott, where, like, authors need to write for the mainstream audience, and the mainstream audience in Canada is overwhelmingly white. So regardless of your background, regardless of who you are, you need to write white. I guess you need to write white. I don't know if that answered the question. That's a really big question. I would go so far as to say that kind of, yes, Hamlet does typically refer to like the canon, and it does kind of exclude the more diverse / recent authors that we've mentioned. That's not to say that the term Hamlet can't be salvaged. I guess I'm a little more optimistic than some, but yeah, I don't know.
Great.
Does that answer the question? I don't know.
I think
I wasn't born to lecture.
Great. Okay. So great. So he says he's satisfied with the answer. So
thanks, Ryan B.
Excellent. Okay. And then just like, are you going to release the second version? Hopefully this play will have a larger life than just on your screen. So I don't know, keep an eye out for that in a few years, maybe. Once I can convince Ryan to write get the old script out of the trash and like merge both of them together. We'll do it someday, you know? But yeah, great. Well, I think that's it for the questions. So congratulations again to the cast. I have a whole whack of thank yous I have to get through, so I'm going to do that. Great. So before we go, just a few thank yous. So we want to thank Spencer Collar for the original graphic design of our poster. Thank you to Sarah Caraher, to Joseph Birdie from Fly the Nest and the Writers Taking Flight Writers Group. Thank you to Naz and Taya from Nightwood for sharing their experiences of digital theater. Thank you to my parents for letting Ryan sleep on our couch pre-COVID so that we could churn out this play. Thank you to the National Theatre School for awarding us an Arts Apart grant that made this project possible. We love paying artists. Special thank you to Erica and Tova for emailing us and keeping us in the loop. And thank you to our fabulous cast, Armin, Alicia, Jill, Linus, and Jamie, for being so open to learning about Canadian literature and for giving the same energy to a Zoom play as you would a real in-person play. And the biggest thank you goes to our SM/techie extraordinaire, Adriana Solis Lozano, without whom none of this live stream nonsense would have ever been possible. And yeah, thank you for being my guy in the chair. Yeah, so with that, we wish you all a good night. Thank you for tuning in. Go read some Hamlet, I guess, or not.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do anything. Happy New Year.
Just watch the freaking play, Izzy. I'm kidding. Go read authors. Go support authors. Canadian authors. Just think about who you're supporting. I'm kidding. Thank you all for tuning in.
It's over.
So much, everyone.
Are we free? Oh shit, you're like 5 seconds in the future. It's great on the TV.
Wave bye, guys.
Oh, sorry, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.